good evening, and welcome to Family and Community Engagements Power Hour. Yes, 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 we're back again. This is Black History Month, and we are honoring the heritage of some great people in our community. Tonight, we are in honor of Garland V. Stewart, which in namesake Stewart Middle School. I know some of you have heard of Stewart Middle School. I have his grandchildren here. Oh my God. And I'm so excited. I am so excited because they're going to talk about his life, his legacy, the fun granddad that they knew, tell you all about him. And why is that school named after him? Who is this man? We're going to find out. So I have with us today, my name is Angela Fullwood. I'm the supervisor for family and community engagement. And with me, I have Kiana Williams, who is our African American and multicultural coordinator, who is in charge of Black History Month and really had me going. She said, Angela, I need for you to bring it. I need for you to bring some important people on this program. And we did that. We're excited. I have with me none other than Nita Stewart. Benita Stewart. Yes, she is. Benita Stewart Wilson. And she's the granddaughter, one granddaughter. He has plenty. They can tell you how many, but she's one granddaughter of Garland V. Stewart. She is an implementation manager at a digital payments company. She's with us here today to tell us all about her grandfather, and along her side is her cousin, Mr. Steve Stewart, and he is a CEO. Oh, I forgot to tell you that Benita Stewart is an entrepreneur herself, and Steve is the CEO of a company that he has called Smart Broadband, and really what it does is it's all about improving communications through technology. But I'm going to turn it over to them. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you, Steve and Benita.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us. And thanks again for highlighting our grandfather as well. So we appreciate you and your organization for acknowledging him and saying he's an important person, because he's always going to be important to us. But
yes,
I'm glad that you guys have an effort to ensure that people continue to know, especially our kids, know why and how our schools are named after certain individuals in the community. So we thank you.
Oh, well, You're welcome. All right, so let's get started. As we sit here and attempt to gain more knowledge and understanding really about who Mr. Stewart is, could you talk to us about who he is and what he did to impact Tampa?
Oh, wow. So I'm going to start and let Stephen add to it. But, he was the first of many in Hillsborough County itself. So he got his degree from Morehouse. He went on and got his master's from University of Michigan. And remember, education, my grandfather was born in 1909. So for him to be that educated is, exceptional in that regard anyway. And so he went on to become an educator and then moved into being a principal, and then the first African-American assistant superintendent as well in Hillsborough County. One of the things about, we affectionately called him Daddy Stewart. So he was always Daddy Stewart to us. But one of the things to really note about him is he will always say, I didn't decide I was going to be this champion to move people forward. He was really just passionate about making certain that when I say we, I mean African Americans, had equal opportunity to education. And it just so happened that rather than just say he wanted to change, he became instrumental in making the change. Now, he would also have been one to say, I didn't do it by myself. It was him and a number of community leaders that made certain that we were able to have access to equal education. And I think that was like his quiet strength as well that I love about him. His demeanor was always, just even keeled and, but he had everything he did was with intention. Everything he did was with intention. And even though there were not comfortable spaces that he was in, he made certain that he sat in them so that we can be where we are today. Not just his family, but those also in the community. So that's what I remember about him. And of course, we have a laundry list of awards and everything that we can go through. But as his granddaughter, I really learned to be intentional. And although you might not, rather than just complain about whatever your situation is, be the instrument of change.
Right. Very well said, Nita. You know, I think about it, all the accolades he had and growing up, I never remember him being intentional or pointing out any of that to us, right? I mean, we could see him in the Sentinel or the Tampa Times, and I apologize, I've been going from Tampa a while. And it was never a topic of conversation. It was, hey, Steve, are you playing chess? Hey, Steve, let's go somewhere off of Kennedy to this bookstore, and he's getting some books that probably were out of publication in the 50s, but it was something there to gain knowledge from. So he was very intentional as far as leading by example, but he did it with humility. I'm really trying to think of any point in time over the 30 plus years that I knew Daddy Stewart that he said, hey, look what I did, right? He basically, from our understanding, for what we saw, being in the community, being in the church, we were not as privy to his educational side. We came in more on his real estate side, but everything he did was by example, and there was always a lesson to be learned. And regardless of, I'd say, challenges, be it based on perception versus reality, he was always even keel. Now, there was a point that if you crossed the line, he would let you know. Yeah. And he was but it was very rare. And, that is, and I'm thinking as I talk, I mean, that is something that, when we talked before this began and we talked about all his accolades, I'm like, I don't even remember him. If we knew about his accolades, we saw him on a wall or read about it. Mm-hmm. But he never said, hey, look what I did. This is what you need to do. No, that was not Daddy Stewart. Daddy Stewart was, hey, I understand my environment. I grew up from 15, 16 years old with one arm. I lost my parents, my brother and I, worked for ourselves. We got educated. We went to school. We went and got advanced degrees, and here's where we are. And now let me burden you with the knowledge I have, and hopefully you'll take that and be impactful in your communities.
Wow. So you just said a whole lot right there. You're talking about obstacles, so we know he was married. He had 2 children, 2 sons. Yes. Okay. Yes. So let's talk about his family. So you talked about, and I want to look at some of the obstacles and adverse situations, because you just talked about his parents were, he grew up without parents. So tell us about that, and bring us to getting married and having children. So talk about that.
So Steve talked about my grandfather having one arm. He lost his arm working very young, and some kind of plant. I can't remember the.
I think it was a crack. I think they actually made like some type of cracker or something. It was a, if I remember the story correctly, he was working a shift and his sleeve got caught, and he notified the maintenance head or whatever. And in his panic, instead of cutting the machine off, he actually accelerated it, and it crushed his arm. So it had to be amputated, I think, right at the bicep, or right above the bicep. And he was, 15, 16? He was a teenager when this happened.
Right. And my dad often says, so my father of his 2 sons is Delano Stewart. the oldest son. And then Steve's father is my Uncle Frank, who was the baby boy. And my dad still tells the story that his father, my grandfather's father, told him when he woke up, he said, hey, Garland, you do not have an arm. You got two choices. You can have a pity party, or you can live just like everybody else. And so my dad said he chose the latter. And so when he lost his parents, even at a younger age too, he often says that he remembers that's what his dad always said. I could either, wallow in whatever situation I am in, or I can fight my way through it. So he always had the demeanor where he was going to excel. So that's how they moved from North Carolina back down to Florida. When he lost his parents, he came down to Florida from North Carolina, and he met my grandmother here. And that's where they met and married until both of their deaths, and had 2 children and a slew of grandchildren. So I have 6 sisters. My cousin has a brother and sister, so there's 3. So, and now we have greats from them. So lots of heritage in the family. But when you talk about obstacles, there were none. I mean, I think I might have been a teenager by the time I actually knew that my grandfather did not have both of his arms. Yeah. He never wanted anyone to treat him like he was handicapped. So he had a prosthetic arm. However, it always stayed in his pocket. I still to this day do not know how he tied his ties, but he did. And so he just felt it was one of those things that he
not only that, he taught me how to tie a tie.
Right.
With his one arm. Yeah. Right.
So, I mean, it's just a testament really to you have a choice in life, right? You really have a choice. You have a choice to accept what you are God-given, right? And make an adjustment. And he was just one who would say, make an adjustment. We're going to make adjustments. And I think that's what stuck with him forever. He, God-fearing, of course, he was very involved with Allen Temple AME Church. He's one of those who's got a name on the back of the pew now, but very involved in making certain that we were involved as well, his sons and now us. So I just really do think that it is true what people say, children, no matter what you say, they do what you do, right? Yeah. Most of the time they will see what you do and more often do that. And so his, my father, they went off. Now my dad went to Morehouse. He had to leave and go to the service. I thought because he had to leave to go to the service. No, he was not doing what he's supposed to do in school. And so my grandfather was like, yeah, about that. So he went to the service, came back and finished school. But education was impressed in us, no matter what you do, right? And making certain we get the education, not only to that we have, but also still doing what we love to do, which is the entrepreneurial spirit that we both have.
So both of Garland's sons attended Morehouse College?
Yes, both attended Morehouse, both became lawyers.
Okay, I did not realize that Uncle Frank, I'm calling him Uncle Frank.
Yeah.
Both are attorneys. Yeah.
Okay, both are attorneys. Now I do know that my Uncle George worked in your father's law firm. Right. And so we have a lot of firsts and that so do you all remember what school Mr. Stewart was a principal?
Middleton.
Oh, he was the principal at Middleton.
Correct.
Okay. Do you know what years those were?
Let me check my notes. I don't. Let me see if I have it actually written. I don't remember the actual years.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Because he actually taught at multiple schools.
Okay.
I do remember him. I think the last principal position he had was at Middleton.
Okay. Do you remember what schools that he taught?
Other ones, I do have it in my notes. Just one moment, if I can get to them. But yeah, so he was able to.
I'm just trying to think if he was the principal when my parents were there in 62. They were there from 60
Oh man,
to 1960 to 1962.
Now that I don't know, but I do know.
All right. So again,
while we talking through that, I'll share something. In I'm thinking when our fathers had a law firm. Was that on Lake, Benita?
29.
What?
29th Street.
29th, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so Garland Daddy Stewart had his real estate firm next door. And I know in the summers, that's why I would hang out. But if any of our little buddies came in or people who live in the neighborhood, if we had a question, we had to have a book to answer it. So Daddy Stewart would pack us all in a car. We would go get some books and we would sit in his office and read and while he conducted business. So most of his business was, I'd say the word we'd use now is around affordable or attainable housing. Mm-hmm. So as he served the community, he had to have understanding of the people that lived around the corner.
Wow.
Right. So,
yes.
So, but with that, it was not about, rent mortgage. It was, oh, you have children, where they're in school, what are their goals, what are their aspirations? Oh, if there's some legal needs or advice, I'll put you in touch with one of my sons. So,
wow.
So, we never, we didn't, we were in the community, mm-hmm. which is huge. So one of the things, even in, you introduced earlier about what I do in my company, it's all about building capacity in these communities. So mm-hmm. one thing, if I can relate back to Garland is, despite his education, upbringing, and, his ability to go other places, he stayed at 2402 to be impactful in that community, mm-hmm. right? To service that community, right? And, and we need people like that, right? Mm-hmm. We need people that lead by example, regardless. And we knew his environment he grew up in, but he never chose to lead that community for other opportunities or anything else. He wanted to be a champion, a lighthouse, a bridge for the community that he grew up in and served. Yes. So that is one of the things that, I look at now, and, it probably didn't resonate when I was younger, but it really resonates now. You don't build communities unless you have leaders like a Garland V. Stewart that can lead by example, right? And they don't take the flight to say, oh, I've made it, now emulate what I do, but I'm somewhere else. No, build that capacity in those communities and let them emulate based on what they see on a day-to-day basis.
So you all said that he owned a real estate agency. So this is after he was an educator, teacher, principal,
superintendent,
assistant superintendent for Hillsborough County Public Schools. And then he retired and then became real estate, or was he doing this throughout his career?
He retired and then became went into real estate.
Wow. Wow, mm-hmm. That's amazing. So as a superintendent, do you all know of any changes that he made or help make happen during his tenure as assistant superintendent?
You mean policy?
Yes.
Or specifically that he, the only thing overall broad stroke is just ensuring that we had, equitable education. Okay. And that meant making certain that all schools had books that, were not, I'm trying to think of a nice way to say it, but the books were equitable to those in white schools. And that, a lot of times, even if they were used, there were still books that our children could use in his view. Mm-hmm. So he was really just about making certain that everyone had the opportunity to get a quality education.
All right. So what are some memories? I know, Nita, you have some photos.
I do.
About him, with your father. So I want you to go ahead and share those and talk
Okay.
through some memories, some fond memories that you all have. And I'm pretty sure some of these photos are going to spark Steve memory and of what y'all call him, Daddy Stewart.
Daddy Stewart.
Daddy Stewart. And as you're talking and sharing, I just want you all to just, based on his guidance and advice as a grandfather, what are some life lessons that you learn and are living today as you're strolling through some of those photos?
Okay. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, and if you guys can let me know if you see it. So
yes.
This is actually a painting of my grandfather. One of his students actually made that painting, and it hung because it was huge. But it still actually hangs in the garage of his home that has now been passed down. But that was one of the paintings that one of his students had done. But this one, my grandfather was a family man. Like I said, the picture on the left rather, is him, my uncle and my dad and my grandmother. And I'm sure they were in their Sunday best, so it might be a posed photo. However, the picture on the right is all of us at church. And that's actually his brother next to my father. That's already in, my Uncle Frank, Steve, Jeff, my grandmother, and he's behind in the glasses. Uh-oh. It switched before I finish, but we have a good foundation in the church as well. We always went. In fact, my grandfather took us to choir rehearsal every week. I remember him picking us up from school and taking us to choir rehearsal and piano lessons and all that other good stuff. He also was a member of Omega Psi Phi. He was actually one of the founding members of the Tampa chapter here. I think one of the things about my grandfather that I remember more than anything else, that, like I said, he was intentional. So if he's going to do it, he was going to do it, right? He wasn't just going to show up and, wear the colors, he was going to be involved. And he was there as well. Both of his sons, too, also became Omega men. He was a Masonic brother as well. He was a member of Toastmasters. In fact, he just believed that everyone should be able to speak in any situation. So I think not being nervous and being on here with you guys talking right now is an example of that. And one of the things that when I used to sing in church, and I would tell him I was nervous, he would just say, you're prepared, you know the song, just sing, allow the Spirit to lead you, and you just sing. Don't pay attention to anybody in the room. And that's really what I do when I speak. I know I'm prepared. So I'm comfortable speaking to anybody. The picture on the right was the blueprints. This was one that I took. I took a picture of a photo, but this was when they were building his space in the courthouse. My grandfather was also a Boy Scout, and he was involved with the Scouts for over 40 years. He got one of their Silver Beaver Awards, which is awarded to those in the community who, I think it's the highest award that you can get as a volunteer as well. So he was honored there. And it also, I think, just speaks to who he was. Again, it was never anything that he was seeking to prove, so to speak. It was just something that was a part of him that he did, and they awarded him for it. And remember, we talked about his real estate. This was his office, him in front of his office. And we talked about him losing his arm, and he always has his arm in his pocket. So nobody really knew. He really didn't want people to treat him special because of the handicap. So he chose to persevere in regardless, to make certain that he was still able to drive and do everything that anyone with two arms would do. So I think that tenacity and perseverance is in both of us. We're both entrepreneurs, so you got to have tenacity in that regard too. So, and then I think the last set of photos is him teaching or playing chess with my cousin who's on the line and somebody from the community. And then on the right is my dear and Daddy Stewart. Dear is who we called Daddy Stewart's wife. And one of the things that I thought was just amazing, they would load all of us up, and not just us, not just, this 8 of us as far as grandchildren, people from the community too. We would all be piled in a big van, go over to Orlando. We would go to SeaWorld. And I just cannot imagine taking 15 some odd children to, those big parks, but they did. And we had an amazing time. But Steve, I know with chess, that was one of the things I tried to learn, but that wasn't my thing. But he did. I know they had some very good chess masters that you could talk.
Right. Yeah. Once again, it was once I inquired, then in fact, I am staring at a chessboard, that same chessboard in my office today.
Oh, yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. He was just that kind of grandfather that, and just that kind of man in general that will always say, I think it's the same thing that my dad says to me: to whom much is given, much is required. To whom much is given, much is required. And he did what he needed to do in order to make certain not only that his immediate family had everything that we needed, but also those in the community. Part of being a part of the Boy Scouts for the 40 years that he was a part of the Boy Scouts was to ensure that little Black boys could be a part of the Boy Scouts, right? During a time, when it wasn't popular. Part of him taking on the responsibility of going from educator to principal to downtown to work in the community. Although, if we think about it, during that time when we worked, it was during non-integration, him being the first person, it would make some in our community even hesitant, right? Just because there was so much distrust in the community. Sometimes, they didn't, our community would not want to expand. They wanted to stay within our community. Mm-hmm. But he also understood that it would take more than people that looked like us to instrument change. So I think it was, a courageous and a brave thing for him to do. And just actually always, now this is the one thing that my father says, which would say, there's always a means to an end. We got to get there. We got to just keep working and pushing through to get to the end. And I think if more young people actually know and understand the schools that they are attending, they would have a sense of pride about themselves too. And I think that's one of the things that we do have. It's just really a sense of pride. Growing up, you really don't know, but now as we're older and understand really what he did, it really is, fills me with pride just to know all of the things that he did accomplish.
Yeah, and this brings up another memory from this chess, his dedication to and passion about educating, even in retirement, even after these trips, that was part of our summers. Nita, I know you remember our school lessons in the summer. And once again, not just us as a family, but the kids from the community. And we would have to start at 9 a.m. and go to the early afternoons, but it was our version of summer school. Mm-hmm. And we were disadvantaged because our dear would fill us up full of sugar. So somehow I'd always get a whipping, but that's not my fault when you fill us up with Kool-Aid and sandwiches. But once again, it was to understanding Garland V. Stewart and his commitment to the community and education, even in retirement, with other things they could have been doing and traveling or whatever, they would spend their summers getting us and getting the community kids. And we would have, I can't remember, I don't know if it was 5 days a week. It was probably less because the older cousins would disappear, but I know Nita and I were stuck because we weren't old enough to drive and we were limited where we could go on our bicycles. But once again, that's a memory that, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up, because that was, once again, his passion and love for education and how it could impact the communities.
So let me ask you all this. You all talk about a great, grandfather, a dear, I want to know what your father's thought about his, because for them to be attorneys, I'm pretty sure there had to be some discipline. I'm not saying that he wasn't disciplined, because he sounded like he had y'all right there in check. It was lesson. Yeah. It was lessons. Yeah. It was always about learning, about growing. Do you have stories from your fathers about Garland Stewart that we don't know about?
So, having rambunctious boys. So now I think about boys, and then think about, so my father wanted to be the defiant one because his father was the principal. So he acted up in school, and he just, and he would just tell stories, and I'd be like, Daddy Stewart didn't do that. He was like, okay, yes, he did. Because, the one thing that, here's the other thing my dad used to say, and I think he got it from my grandfather, which was, when you walk out of this house, you no longer just represent you represent me too. And so when he was out doing some of the things that he shouldn't have been doing, selling tickets to the school dance and it wasn't a cost, or selling it for more, whatever he was doing, just my dad being crazy, trying to fit in because he was the principal's son.
Yeah, I was going to say, just define him as a principal's kid. So we know that's a global definition. So,
my grandfather had to get him back in line. Yeah.
And so I have a something from the chat from Floretta Stewart. So is that Shoo?
Yes.
Shoo. Okay. So she says, when he picked me up from school daily, he taught me a different sport. There was a book about soccer, baseball, football, etc. My love and understanding of sports started with him. So you talked about books. There was always a book. If he was going to teach you something, it was going to be a book about something.
Correct.
He was really into education.
Correct.
And then I also have Jeff Stewart.
Yep.
Jeff, it says, it's really amazing listening and remembering to what they did. Truly amazing dedication to family and the community.
Yeah.
Stephen's older.
That's your brother? Oh, okay.
That's my older brother. Correct. Hey, Jeff.
I
mean, this is, and like I said, it's an honor to be here and reminisce, especially as our grandfather, but, just the accolades, and he separated those two, that was another life for him, or something else he did outside, and the time and effort he put in his kids and grandkids. We just look at that as a blessing for us, for sure.
And Jeff says, and he helped him shoot rockets.
That's right. Oh, and there's one more thing. I never beat Daddy Stewart arm wrestling. That one arm.
So he was strong.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I every now and then growing up, he was very strong. So, and I tried him a couple of times. And
yeah, you didn't try them often. There were
no.
Yeah, when it changed, we knew.
Right.
So my grandmother was a pistol. Always, she was a pistol. But if Daddy Stewart, his mood changed, we knew somebody had gone way too far.
Yeah, it was the F Hutton. Yeah. You're gonna stop what you're doing once he changes tone.
Right.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was interested. I was interested in knowing at what age, and so in here, Jeff says that at the age that they lost their parents, it was 11, and then raised themselves from there in Atlanta.
Atlanta before they came down. I think an aunt or someone here in.
Okay.
Yeah. They had a cleaners. My grandparents. My grandfather and his brother, they had a cleaning business. So, it takes my dad to know their logo
I can't think of it. I was trying to research it earlier. I have it somewhere. Yeah.
He sent us to, my sister says in the chat, he sent us to summer camp at IBM. I remember that. I mean, I'm in computer science coding because of that. I think 80% of us that attended that went to working in the industry. So my other sister, India, is also in IT.
Hi, India.
Yeah, Steve actually went into engineering. So, you know, it's those things that you expose your children to, or grandchildren, can stick, right? It you know, it ends up sticking. So, but I forgot about the IBM camp until she just put it into the chat. But yes, he just wanted us to be exposed to as much as he could. And what I love about him, it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't just us. Marco was in the neighborhood. I which is one of my Stephen's friends, he was, you know, recalling even, you know, us going to Orlando or Fort Myers, or, you know, something that we went on trips that, you know, he just made certain that we were all exposed to things.
Yeah, and that's the key word, exposed us. Yeah, yeah. And that's key, right? I mean, part of our challenge in our communities is we just don't know what's out there.
Right.
So for him, when he grabbed these neighborhood kids and some of them in the SeaWorld, just exposing them to it, and it changed some of their lives, you know, for the better. So, and that's key for us, you know, and that's part of education, right? Exposure can make a world of difference.
So he's named after Stewart Middle School used to be the old lake, right? How do you think he would feel about that being, you know, that's Middleton's rival? And how did that all come about? How did his name come up in the hat, and was it a simple vote? Like what took place? Like, how did that come about? Do you all know?
You know, I think Steve and I both are at a disadvantage here because we both lived away when the school was named for him. But the good thing is my sisters are on the chat, so I'm sure they will put it in the chat to make certain that we remember. But I remember when I moved back home, my daughter was in middle school. Now, she had been in a middle charter school in Atlanta forever, and I wanted her to go to Stewart Middle School because of Stewart Middle School. We're going to go to Stewart. And so I remember because
it is a magnet school and it's a choice school. So she could. Right.
Yes. So she was able to get into the school, but it was so much larger than the school that she was in. I remember her first day, because she couldn't talk in the halls at her school. I mean, they were like really, really strict. And then kids came running. And I remember her saying, "Mom," I was like, "You'll get used to it. You'll be running around just like anybody else." But it was important because I wanted her to be in, you know, understand we're back home. So we have this sense of community. And so, you know, who your grandfather is, and, you know, being away, she didn't have that privilege or really understand. Well, she knows who he was, of course, but really being a part of his legacy. It was important to me. So ensuring that she was there.
So is this India talking about
oh, that's the logo. Yes. So when they had their cleaners, he would say, "This one is Mark. This one is trade. We make your clothes look newly made. This one is trade. This was in Mark. We make sure your clothes are new and sharp."
Oh, that was
their logo for that.
Okay, so y'all still remember it.
My dad says it all the time.
Oh, he still
because he talks about how enterprising they both were. So again, it passes down. We're not going to make excuses for our circumstance. We're going to get through our circumstance. And part of that was making certain that they could, you know, take care of themselves. And the cleaners was one of it. And that was their logo.
So I see you all have a great pride in, you know, your family's legacy. And, you know, this being Black History Month. So for me, what does Black History mean to you?
For me, it's 365. Right? I hate that we only have a month. Is, because especially in this day and age where they don't want us to know all of our history, right? There are, people who are purposed to make certain that we have a whitewashed history and not really giving credit to those that came before us, not just my grandfather who paved the way, or my father who paved the way for many attorneys in the state of Florida, or those.
Yeah, because I just mentioned, George E. Edgecombe, the first black worked for
in Hillsborough County.
Yes,
right, and
he paved the way for George to get his job there at his law firm.
Correct. So it's important that we, as a community, I think what I find now as a community, that we're teaching these stories, which is why when we started, I said thank you, because a lot of people don't know what the history is. So it's important for us to keep not only these stories of our community leaders, but as a whole in this country, really understanding the contribution that African Americans have had to the sustaining of this country, right? Inventions, just everything. So, but I do believe it starts with us as a community, making certain that we know it, embrace it, and then share it with other people.
Correct. What about you, Steve?
Well, just finishing Nita's comment, I think, a lot of times when we see these leaders, Black leaders, it's always arm's length, right? But I appreciate the fact that you let us share these personal stories. And, it was never driven about what I do or look what I've accomplished. It was always about, hey, as a family person, here's my contribution so I can continue this legacy with the next generation. Hopefully you can transfer that to your generation as well. So Black History Month to me, it's a refresher that, we still got a long way to go. We all have to do our parts. We all have to help uplift each other. We have to show patience, and we have to have these conversations to remember that where we are, we're built on the backs of others, right? So, and it's going to be a challenge, but once again, I look at this month as a chance to recharge my batteries and keep fighting the fight for our communities.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, I thank you all so much. On that note, I am so honored to have you all here, and it is important, I feel, because I think Nita and I have talked about this before. The great things that just like the humbleness of our family, and not really realizing the contributions that they made to the Tampa area and Hillsborough County, and then we realize it and we're like, wow, that's huge, and we don't get to talk about it all the time. I'm glad I get to have this platform, but I often ask our elders, like, tell me stories. What did they do? And for some reason, they don't like to talk about it. I don't know if it's because of pain, the pain is not very good memories because of, some of the struggles that they had to have, some of the adverse situations that they had to be in, some of the obstacles that they had to jump. They just want their work to just show right now. They don't really want to talk about the painful parts of it. And I'm so glad that Ms. Williams, who is over this, she included in our packet, time for us to talk to our elders about the time that they lived, because I feel like we do need to understand, we do need to know, and it comes directly from the mouth of our ancestors. Like we need to hear those stories and know these stories, so that we're able to share them, because if not, then it'll just get forgotten, and it need to be inscribed on the tables of life, not just in the table of our hearts, but in the tables of life. And so this is being recorded. So hey, we're gonna if I want to know something, I'm gonna say, look, go to the video. You want to know about Garland V. Stewart, go to the video.
Yes.
You have it from the mouth of his grandchildren.
Well, as Nita said, I can't leave without telling one more story.
Okay, go ahead.
So I kind of probably follow the lines of his children. Benita and I attended Tuskegee, and her grades balanced out my grades. So Garland was very ill, and he saw Nita graduate, and he stayed around to my graduation, which was about a year later. And when he was sick and he said, hey, he went to the hospital, said, I don't want, any medicine, just keep me comfortable. I don't, I've done my time here. So I never forget, and he was pretty much comatose. I was talking to him and I said, hey, Daddy Stewart, I just found out I got one more class to take at Tuskegee. And he cracked a smile. And then that was it. And then I left. And yeah, but the point was that he was so focused and wanted us to get our education and wanted us to succeed that, he stayed around to see me. He said, I'm gonna see that boy graduate. So that is my fondest memory of all the great memories that he stuck it out. Deer passed away. A lot of, he told me one day, I think Dr. Reddy had passed, and he said, hey, if you live long enough, you see all your friends die. Mm. And he held out hope until I got past that last class, and he checked out. But
the backstory is I got to Tuskegee after him, but
that's right.
For him. Oh, but yeah. So
he kind of skipped over that part.
He skipped over it.
Yeah.
He said we were at Tuskegee together.
Right. He but I think that was his grace. Yeah. Right. So even though he took a little bit of a longer path.
Yeah.
He extended that grace.
He stuck it through. He even came down and he didn't have a ticket. They were like, sir, you don't have a ticket. He's like, I ain't gonna be here long. I'm going to this graduate. So, but that was his commitment to us as a family to make sure that we saw things through and get on the path to where we could contribute.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your grandfather with us tonight. And for all of you, thank you all for being with us tonight. We sure do appreciate it. Remember, there it is. That's the link, our YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. It'll be up by the end of this week, and you can take it and share it with your friends, the whole video. And there are others there for you to enjoy. And with that, I want to again say good night and thank you, Stewart family, for being with us. Thank you for sharing your grandfather with us. Truly amazing man. I wish I had known him. I really do. I'm going to start calling him Daddy Stewart myself. Daddy Stewart.
And thank you for letting us share this great memory. I mean, this was very heartfelt and this is great for us.
All right. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.